Iron Man, The Psychology of a Hero by Ford Vogel. Now let's look at the key idea of this. Now, the main idea of this is that forms of adversity are incredibly important into changing into a positive person, whether that be moral, being kind, being selfless, or just being a good person that is genuinely positive to the people around them. Now, to do this, we're going to follow the arc of Tony Stark through the MCU, but he starts his arc as a narcissist. Now, these symptoms are from the Mayo Clinic, and they improve wanting the best of everything, thinking they're better than everyone else, and by extension, treating others poorly because of it. Now, at the start of his first movie, Iron Man exhibits all of these symptoms, showing how deeply narcissistic and how negative that is. Now, the two main causes for his narcissism are from a lack of adversity, namely in his youth, whether that be financial and intellectual. Firstly, intellectual. Sal McDev from Christ University has found that many leaders are deeply narcissistic and that they're all intelligent, finding a major correlation between intelligence and from the narcissism present in that. Now, this intelligence, of course, granted him a lack of adversity as a youth, namely academically, because in short, Tony Stark is a genius, and he's never had to struggle much with that aspect. The second aspect is financial, as Sean R. Martin, Stephanie Coate, and Todd Woodruff, all of which who are professors at various universities, said, after leading a long study on the effects of income on quiz, that as economic inequality rises, we may expect to see an increasing number of leaders who have wealthy parents, are more narcissistic, and do not rely on classic learning behaviors to lead. Now, again, as a youth, Tony was raised in a very, very rich household, and that, combined with his intellect, gave him no real sources of adversity as a child in order to grow into a positive person. But this all changed on one fateful day, where we go to the first major change, which is moral. Now, it's important to look here on the most important experience of his life. As we just said, one of the major sources of inadversity that he had is from financial. And even as an adult, he still is very rich, and a lot of this comes from his weapons. And his weapons ended up to him getting captured by a terrorist organization called the Ten Rings. Now, this draws major parallels to Through the Tunnel, a short story from The Habit of Learning by Doris Lessing, also one of the stimulus materials. In this, the main character also goes through an incredible and dangerous experience that is training and going through an underground tunnel and almost dying, just like Tony did when he was captured by the terrorists. But just like our main character in Through the Tunnel, Tony doesn't take this lying down. He fights. He fights to live just like our character fought to make it out of the tunnel, and he creates his very own Iron Man suit, showing how he has become a strong person. And then immediately after this, when he gets home, his morals have shifted. He's gained a better viewpoint of how his weapons are affecting people in the world, and he immediately stops the weapons production of Stark Industries, showing how he's prioritizing other people above himself for the first time. Now we need to go to our second major change, which is emotional. Now, even after this moral change, he still has major issues. As stated by Nick Fury in the second Iron Man movie, he is still rowdy and doesn't play well with others. And the CDC, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, says that social connections and stable relationships are vital for leading a healthy life and coping with hard times like stress, anxiety, and depression. But at the start of the Avengers movie, while he is moral and he does come to hit the fellow heroes' aid against Loki, he still has echoing words in a fateful encounter with Captain America, where Captain America bluntly says, among other things you can see on the screen, that he's not the one to make the sacrifice play, and that the only person he fights for is himself. Now, throughout the entire Battle of New York, he displays vulnerability like no other time as he's relying on his teammates in order to win. And quoting from Marcus Thompson in Simone Biles and the True Act of Justice, the key ingredient to courage is vulnerability. And if the action is not vulnerable, then it is not courageous. Eventually, though, he does prove Captain America wrong, as when a nuclear bomb is sent towards the city with people still in it, he does make the sacrifice play, and he does try to sacrifice himself to win the day. But here's the counter: the mental distress that came from that adversity that pushed him to work well with others. As in Iron Man 3, when he's in a diner, he is reminded by a little kid of the Battle of New York, and he has a brutal panic attack immediately, which, according to the Mayo Clinic, is a very clear sign of PTSD from a traumatic event. Now, these experiences, again, have major parallels to Through the Tunnel from The Habit of Learning, as after our protagonist gets through the tunnel, there's a quote: "He scooped up handfuls of water from the cool, salty sea to splash on his face, and did not know whether it was blood or salt water he tasted. After a time, his heart quieted, his eyes cleared, and he sat up. He could see the local boys diving and playing half a mile away. He did not want them. He wanted nothing but to go back home and lie down." This shows just how much these dangerous experiences can affect people. But the thing is, through even more adversity later in that movie, he is able to overcome this. As he eventually, at the end of the movie, is able to bring more people in because of his adversity, as from the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, is the best way to help with trauma and to overcome that. And eventually, he does accept his vulnerability just like Simone Biles, and he abandons his Iron Man persona to become a better person. Now we can look over the entire arc. He starts as a narcissist, and then through his initial adversity, he becomes just a genuinely morally good person through his experiences being kidnapped by terrorists. And then after he's pushed to have to work together with people, he becomes a selfless person. And then at the end of his arc, after the biggest fight of his life against Thanos, he makes the true ultimate sacrifice. Again, echoing back to Captain America's words in the first Avengers movie, where he does make the sacrifice play, and he sacrifices himself to save the entire universe, becoming a true hero. The bibliography, which
Which isn't quite there yet.
isn't quite there.
Okay, you're